That signature belongs to my father. Black Waitress pointed at the CEO's wall. He dropped his glass. What could make a black waitress recognize a signature on a CEO's wall? And why would the CEO react so suddenly when she pointed it out? Hello everyone, and welcome back to the channel. If you enjoy powerful stories filled with mystery, emotion, and unexpected moments, you're in the right place. Please subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you never miss our next story. Thank you so much for being here, for watching, and for supporting the channel. Before we begin, tell us in the comments, would you trust a stranger who claimed a signature on your wall belonged to her father? Now, let's step into this mysterious moment and discover how it all began. The tray tilted when Nia saw her dead father's signature framed beneath the Whitmore name. Crystal chimed against silver. Amber champagne trembled in 40 glasses while a string quartet played beneath the vaulted ceiling of Whitmore Tower, 60 floors above Manhattan. Warm light slid across black marble, tailored tuxedos, and the gold lettering behind the stage. Whitmore, Vantage, $2.4 billion. Nia Carter steadied the tray against her palm. One glass had spilled across her white serving cup, cold bubbles soaking the fabric, but she did not look down. Her eyes remained fixed on the blueprint dominating the west wall. Guests had treated it as decoration all evening, a relic from the engineering breakthrough that had made Whitmore Holdings powerful enough to purchase competitors instead of fearing them. The drawing showed a structural control system in dense blue lines. Beneath it sat a polished brass plaque crediting Whitmore Advanced Systems. But in the lower right corner, partly obscured by the frame, a signature curved through the paper in dark ink. Nia stepped closer. The quartet softened behind a burst of applause as Ethan Whitmore signed the final acquisition document. Camera shutters clicked. The scent of lilies and expensive cologne thickened around the stage. Ethan rose, 38 years old and immaculate in midnight blue wool, wearing the calm expression expected from a man who could move markets with one sentence. A director handed him a cut crystal glass. He lifted it toward the room. To the future of Whitmore Holdings. The guests raised their drinks. Nia did not. She set her tray on a linen-covered service station and moved toward the wall. Her shoes made almost no sound on the marble, yet a nearby supervisor noticed immediately. His fingers snapped once at his side, ordering her back without disturbing the toast. She kept walking. Up close, the blueprint smelled faintly of old paper beneath the brass and fresh varnish. The signature was not merely similar. Isaiah Carter had signed every birthday card with that long rising eye. He had marked Nia's school lunches with the same hooked C. Even after illness made his hand unsteady, the final stroke always doubled beneath his surname like a narrow bridge. Here it was. Carter. Her father's hand, hanging inside another family's monument. Ethan began to drink. Nia lifted one finger toward the corner of the blueprint. That signature belongs to my father. The sentence crossed the ballroom without a shout. Forks stopped against porcelain. The quartet broke apart one instrument at a time until only a violin held a thin, unfinished note. Ethan turned toward her. His gaze followed her finger to the ink beneath the glass. For one suspended second, the polished executive vanished. His grip opened. The crystal struck the marble and split with a sharp report, scattering champagne over his shoes. No one moved. Nia stood beside the wall in her soaked cuff and plain black uniform, while dozens of phones slowly rose around her. Ethan stared first at the signature, then at her face, as if one of them had just contradicted everything he had inherited. His mouth tightened around a name he had not expected to hear from a waitress, or anywhere in that room. Isaiah Carter, he said, and the way he knew it made Nia forget every shard of glass between them. Get her out of here. Ethan's order cut through the ballroom as champagne hissed across the marble at his feet. Under the amber chandeliers, security moved between tables dressed in white linen, their polished shoes grinding crystal into glittering dust. The room smelled of citrus perfume, hot wax, and the sharp mineral bite of spilled wine. Nia lowered her pointing hand, but did not step back. A floor manager seized her tray and whispered through clenched teeth, "You're finished. Move." 2 guards closed in. Phones tracked them from every direction. Ethan's jaw hardened as he looked from Nia to the framed blueprint. No statements. No photographs. Escort her through the service corridor. The command restored motion to the room. Investors murmured. Silverware touched china again. Nia allowed one guard to reach her elbow before she spoke. "The mark after the R isn't a flourish." Ethan lifted a hand. The guard stopped. Nia turned toward the wall, where the blueprint's black lines gleamed beneath museum glass. "Your company displays it upside down." A brittle laugh escaped one of the executives. Ethan did not join him. "Explain." Nia stepped close enough for the chilled glass to reflect her face beside the Whitmore crest. She traced the air beneath Isaiah Carter's signature without touching the frame. "My father compressed field notes into his pen strokes. That long curve is a load path. The 3 breaks beside it mean the outer brace carries heat away from the central housing." Her fingertip shifted half an inch. "And that small hook means the alloy must be stress-tested after cooling, not before." The quartet remained silent now. Only the ventilation system whispered overhead. Ethan crossed the wet marble and bent toward the signature. A line most guests would mistake for a smear ran beneath the final letter. His thumb hovered over it from the other side of the glass. "What happens if the test comes first?" "Hairline fractures pass inspection," Nia said. "They widen under repeated thermal cycling. By the time the instruments detect them, the housing has already failed." Ethan's eyes snapped to hers. The words were too exact, too unadorned. Not a rehearsed accusation. Not a plea designed for cameras. Knowledge had entered the room, and money could not order it back out. "Who taught you that?" "Isaiah Carter." The floor manager tugged at Nia's sleeve. "That's enough." This time Ethan caught the man's wrist before he could pull her away. His movement was quiet, but every guard saw it. "Release her." The manager obeyed. Ethan faced the guests and raised his voice just enough to reach the nearest tables. "Ms. Carter mistook a reproduction for an original. Security will handle the disruption." Confusion rippled across the ballroom, softened by the resumed clink of glasses. Then Ethan leaned toward his chief of security. "Erase the last 5 minutes from the internal event feed. Preserve a private copy under my authorization." That order cost him control of the public story if anyone discovered it, but he gave it without blinking. He turned to Nia. "Walk." "Not through the service exit," she said. Ethan studied her for one taut second, then dismissed both guards with a nod. He led her past the gold-paneled elevators and into a narrow conference room hidden behind smoked glass. The door sealed with a muted click, cutting off the music and the murmuring crowd. Cold white light fell across a walnut table. Ethan placed his phone face down and remained standing. "You knew the notation. You knew the failure sequence. So this stops being a scene and becomes a private conversation." Nia pulled the damp cuff away from her wrist. "Private for whom?" Ethan slid the lock into place. "For the 2 people in this building who know Isaiah Carter's signature was never decorative." The balance in the room shifted. Moments earlier, he had ordered her removed. Now he had removed everyone else. Ethan pointed to the chair opposite him. "Sit down, Miss Carter. Tell me what your father left you." The ventilation hummed above the smoked glass room, steady and cold, while muffled jazz pulsed through the sealed door. A silver carafe sweated onto the walnut table. Nia remained standing. "My father left me something powerful enough to make men like you offer money before they offer the truth." Ethan's hand paused beside the chair. He opened a drawer, removed a leather checkbook, and laid it beneath the white light. "Name the amount." The paper made a dry whisper as he uncapped his pen. Nia looked at the blank line, then pushed the checkbook back with 2 fingers. "You think poverty and price are the same thing. I think people deserve compensation. Compensation comes after acknowledgement. Silence comes before theft." Ethan's jaw tightened. Beyond the wall, an elevator chimed, followed by the faint roll of catering carts across marble. "If this becomes public tonight," he said, "your name will be dragged through every financial network in the country before breakfast." Nia reached behind her apron and removed a folded sheet protected inside a worn plastic sleeve. The paper was yellowed at the creases, its edges soft from years of careful handling. She placed it between them, but kept her palm over the lower half. "Then you should stop wasting time." Ethan leaned closer. A faint scent of machine oil still clung to the letter, preserved among Isaiah Carter's old tools. Across the visible section ran Isaiah's compact handwriting and a partial series of cooling load figures. One sentence ended at the torn edge. "If Whitmore ever displays my work as his own, the original agreement will prove." Nothing followed. Half the sheet was missing. "Where is the rest?" Ethan asked. "Somewhere my father believed your family couldn't reach." Nia lifted her hand, allowing him to inspect the page without taking it. Ethan compared the slanted notation with a scanned image on his phone. The same hooked sevens, the same compressed capital R, the same three-dot mark Isaiah had hidden inside his signature. This could still be reproduced. Nia pulled the letter back into its sleeve. "Then verify the paper, the ink, and the project code. Unless your family destroyed every record." That landed harder than any accusation. Ethan crossed to a dark oak panel and pressed his thumb against a concealed reader. A red light appeared. "Private Family Archive. Board authorization required." He entered an override sequence. His phone vibrated instantly with an automated warning, but he silenced it. "That archive is restricted to Whitmore directors," he said. "Then let a director go alone." Nia turned toward the door. Ethan watched the damp cuff at her wrist, the uniform his staff had threatened to take from her, and the letter no check could buy. He opened the conference room instead. The chief of security waited in the corridor, earpiece gleaming beneath the gold elevator lights. Ethan handed him the phone containing the preserved gala footage. "Lock this copy under my personal encryption. No board access." "Sir, the archive corridor logs every entry." "I know." Ethan led Nia past the elevators to a bronze door without a handle. He placed his palm against the scanner. Warm metal clicked inside the wall, followed by the heavy release of 3 magnetic locks. Cool, dust-scented air moved through the widening gap. Rows of steel cabinets disappeared into blue security light. Nia stepped across the threshold first. A waitress had entered the Whitmore family archive, and Ethan had used his own authority to put her there. The bronze door sealed behind them. On the nearest cabinet, a brass plate read Project Aurora, original authorship records. Ethan stared at it, then at Isaiah's half-letter in Nia's hand. "If your father's agreement is in this room," he said, "someone in my family spent 30 years making sure neither of us would see it." Footsteps sounded beyond the locked door. More than one person, coming closer. 3 hard knocks struck the bronze door, each one rolling through the steel cabinets like a judge's gavel. Blue security light glazed the archive shelves, and the chilled air smelled of dust, old paper, and machine oil. Ethan glanced toward the sealed entrance while Nia moved to the cabinet marked Project Aurora, original authorship records. "Mr. Whitmore," a voice called from the corridor. "The board requires you to leave the archive immediately." A red indicator began blinking above the lock. Ethan entered his authorization code, opened the cabinet, and pulled out a thick gray ledger. "Then we work quickly." Nia laid Isaiah's half-letter beside it. The notation in the margin matched a tab stamped Aurora Thermal Core. Ethan turned to that section. Crisp corporate pages documented patents, licensing schedules, and decades of revenue. Whitmore names appeared in embossed black type. Isaiah Carter's did not. Nia placed one finger on a faint indentation beneath the printed credit. This page was altered. Ethan angled the ledger under a brass reading lamp. Its warm beam exposed 2 sets of impressions in the paper. the visible line naming Whitmore Advanced Systems, and an older line pressed into the fibers underneath. Original system architect, Isaiah Carter. Neither of them spoke. Outside, an electronic chime sounded as someone attempted an executive override. Nia opened the engineering appendix. Her father's notation ran through every foundational element. The cooling sequence, load distribution, emergency bypass, and fracture safeguards that had later appeared across Whitmore facilities worldwide. Ethan searched the approval pages. Each revision carried Isaiah's initials until the final filing. There, his name vanished. A Whitmore seal took its place. Aurora built our first profitable division, Ethan said, his thumb motionless against the page. It financed the acquisitions. The tower. Everything after it. Nia closed the ledger halfway, trapping his hand beneath the cover until he looked at her. My father built the foundation. Your family hung its name over the door. The archive lights snapped from blue to white. A ceiling camera rotated with a soft mechanical whir and centered on them. Ethan's phone vibrated. Then again. Then continuously. A board security alert filled the screen. Restricted archive breach recorded. Subject accompanied by unauthorized gala employee. Below it appeared a frozen image of Ethan opening the bronze door for Nia. The board had not merely seen them. It had classified her presence as evidence against him. Ethan forwarded photographs of the altered authorship page to his private encrypted vault before the archive network could lock him out. The cabinet doors clicked shut one after another, magnetic bolts engaging down the aisle. Your credentials have been suspended, the corridor voice announced. Remain inside until the board's representatives arrive. Nia slid Isaiah's letter back into her uniform pocket. Ethan kept the original ledger open beneath the lamp, refusing to hide what it showed. His phone lit with a final message from the chairman. Turn over the woman and the Carter materials, or this will be treated as an ACT of betrayal against Whitmore Holdings. The bronze locks began releasing from the outside. Ethan stepped between Nia and the door. For the first time in 30 years, Isaiah Carter's name stood visible inside the Whitmore archive, and the family whose empire rested upon it was coming to erase it again. Cold white light swept across the open ledger as the archive system shifted into emergency mode. The air conditioning died with a metallic thud, leaving the sealed room warm and smelling of old paper, leather bindings, and overheated circuitry. Beyond the bronze door, muted voices gathered, but Nia's attention had fallen on the financial rider clipped beneath Isaiah Carter's altered filing. Her fingertip stopped beside a block of fine print. Don't open that door yet. Ethan turned from the advancing lock mechanism. Nia pulled the rider beneath the reading lamp and traced the chain of ownership with the blunt edge of a pencil. Project Aurora's patents secured Whitmore Holdings' employee pension fund, a portfolio supporting thousands of machinists, engineers, drivers, and plant workers across 6 states. If Isaiah's stolen authorship became public before the original ownership agreement established a lawful transfer, lenders could freeze the patents as disputed assets. Whitmore's stock would plunge. Pension obligations could be suspended while courts fought over control. The evidence under Nia's hand was enough to sue. It was also enough to turn retirement checks into collateral damage. Ethan read the final clause twice. The archive felt hotter. My uncle tied the pensions to Aurora, he said. Not just the company's valuation. So anyone who leaks this tonight can short the stock before the market opens. Nia glanced toward the bronze door. Your board isn't the only group watching a $2.4 billion deal. Ethan reached for the photograph ledger on his phone. Nia covered the screen with her palm. The white cuff of his tuxedo brushed the rough black fabric of her waitress uniform. No, this proves what they did to your father. It proves enough to start a war, she said. It doesn't prove who should own the patents when that war ends. Outside, a representative ordered the locks released manually. Steel tools scraped against bronze. Ethan lowered the phone. On the table lay the fastest path to vengeance. Isaiah's name pressed into the paper, the substituted Whitmore seal, and technical appendices carrying the architecture of an empire. Nia gathered the pages but did not place them in her pocket. Instead, she slid them back beneath the protective glass and locked the cover. The click was small. Final. They erased my father, she said. I will not answer by erasing people who spent 30 years earning pensions they were promised. Ethan watched her remove the half-letter from her uniform pocket. Along its torn lower edge, one unfinished sentence remained. The original agreement shall be retained with. There has to be a matching half, Nia said. A contract that separates authorship from whatever rights my father was forced to surrender. We find it before this reaches the market. My credentials are gone. Then stop thinking like a CEO. Nia took his access card from the table, snapped its magnetic strip against the ledger's metal clasp, and handed the useless plastic back to him. Think like the man whose family knows where it buried the truth. A sharp chime sounded overhead. The archive speaker announced that external disclosure monitoring had detected an unauthorized search for Carter-related patent records from a terminal outside Whitmore Tower. Someone else was already hunting. Nia folded the letter once and placed it in Ethan's hand, making him responsible for the evidence he had once controlled. We have until the market opens at 9:30 tomorrow morning, she said. Find the original contract, or your enemies will use my father's name to destroy the workers he designed Aurora to protect. The bronze door opened 3 inches. Warm corridor light cut across the floor. Nia stepped beside Ethan rather than behind him. The proof could have made her rich by sunrise. Instead, she had chosen a harder demand. Truth without innocent casualties, and a deadline neither of them could buy their way out of. The bronze door groaned wider, its locking bolts retreating with 3 hard metallic knocks. Warm corridor light spilled across the archive's black marble floor, carrying the faint smell of coffee and overheated circuitry. Beyond the threshold stood the chairman of Whitmore Holdings, Ethan's uncle, flanked by the floor manager, the chief of security, and 2 corporate attorneys holding tablets against their gray suits. Ethan stepped through first. Nia remained at his side, her torn letter visible in his hand. The board will resolve this without further disruption, the chairman said. His gaze settled on Nia's waitress uniform. Ms. Carter will be detained for attempted fraud. You will confirm that she fabricated the letter, exploited a public event, and deceived you into entering the archive. The floor manager lifted her chin. Her employment has already been terminated. The chairman moved closer until the sharp cedar scent of his cologne cut through the colder archive air. Say she forged everything, Ethan, and your suspension disappears. Your office, your voting authority, your archive credentials, all restored before midnight. Nia reached for the letter, but Ethan closed his fingers around it. Not to keep it from her, to keep it safe. And Isaiah Carter? He asked. A disgruntled contractor, his uncle replied. Dead men do not contest corporate records. The fluorescent lights hummed above them. Ethan's jaw shifted once. Preserve the gala footage, he told the chief of security. The chairman's expression hardened. You no longer issue orders. That order was placed before my suspension. Ethan turned toward the security chief. The public feed may remain erased. The original footage stays under private encryption. No edits. No deletions. No exceptions. The chief of security glanced at the chairman, then at the timestamp glowing on his tablet. The preservation command is valid, he said. It cannot be reversed without a judicial order. A soft electronic tone confirmed the lock. For the first time, the chairman looked away from Nia. Last chance, he said. Your name or hers. Ethan walked to the glass wall overlooking Manhattan. Far below, traffic streamed through wet streets in red and white ribbons. His reflection floated over the skyline. Tailored tuxedo, loosened bow tie, Isaiah's torn letter held against his palm. Then he faced the phones already raised by staff gathering beyond the security line. Isaiah Carter's work was altered in Whitmore records, Ethan said, each word carrying through the corridor. Nia Carter did not forge the evidence. She exposed what this company concealed. The chairman tapped his tablet. Ethan's access badge chirped against his jacket and flashed red. A second notification followed. Then a third. CEO authority revoked. Family trust access frozen. Corporate accounts suspended. The elevator assigned to his penthouse vanished from the building directory. Effective immediately, the chairman announced, Ethan Whitmore is removed from operational control. Security will seize all company devices and bar him from every Whitmore property. Ethan placed his phone and black access card on the marble console. The plastic made a small, dry click. You built your life inside this name, his uncle said. And you just surrendered it for a waitress. Nia's hand tightened around the folded edge of her apron, but she did not lower her eyes. Ethan returned Isaiah's letter to her. No, he said. I surrendered it because her father's name was stolen to build mine. Security officers closed around him, waiting for instructions. Yet no one touched Nia. The accusation against her had failed in public, and the chairman's bargain had become a recorded act of coercion. Ethan removed the silver Whitmore pin from his lapel and set it beside the dead access card. The empire remained above and below them, glass, steel, billions in assets, but its doors no longer recognized its former master. Nia looked toward the elevator as the display changed to 1:17 a.m. 8 hours and 13 minutes remained before the market opened. Ethan had protected Isaiah's honor, but he had also surrendered every key that could lead them to the original contract. The elevator arrived with a polished chime. Its doors opened onto a tower they could no longer search. Cold air spilled through the elevator, carrying the faint scent of rain from the lobby doors 40 floors below. The polished walls reflected Nia's black service uniform and Ethan's bare lapel, two people stripped of their assigned places at 1:17 in the morning. Nia stepped inside, but did not press a button. Instead, she unfolded Isaiah's torn letter across the brushed steel handrail. My father taught me never to open the second fold unless his name was called a lie. The elevator chimed impatiently. Ethan held the doors while Nia worked a fingernail beneath a seam disguised by age and glue. The paper resisted, then opened with a dry whisper. A second sheet had been hidden inside the first. Isaiah's handwriting crossed it in tight blue lines, the same deliberate strokes beneath the plans upstairs. Nia read aloud. Years earlier, during Project Aurora's final systems test, Isaiah had discovered a fracture control error buried inside Whitmore's approved design. Under peak load, the cooling network would have expanded against the structural supports, disabling the emergency system it was meant to protect. The flaw could have turned the company's first public installation into a fatal disaster. Isaiah corrected the cooling sequence, redesigned the emergency release, and stopped the launch 43 minutes before activation. Ethan's fingers tightened against the elevator door. My father said a supplier caused that delay. Nia continued. Isaiah had been offered a choice after saving the project: sign a confidentiality agreement and surrender public credit, or face professional ruin, while Whitmore attorneys accused him of causing the defect himself. The agreement promised that the Carter family would be protected financially and legally. It also referred to a separate ownership contract preserving Isaiah's rights. Nia's voice faltered at the final paragraph, but her hands remained steady. I signed because they knew where my daughter went to school. They knew Ruth's medical bills. I believed paper could protect my family from powerful men. If you are reading this, it did not. The elevator alarm began pulsing, sharp and metallic, because Ethan had held the doors too long. He released them. The car descended, fluorescent numbers ticking downward across his face. My father didn't steal Aurora, Ethan said. The admission sounded thin against the machinery. No, Nia answered. He let yours take the blame. Ethan looked at the Whitmore pin still lying beyond the closing doors, a silver mark shrinking into a blade of light. His father had not ordered Isaiah's erasure. He had known enough to stop it, possessed enough power to challenge it, and chosen the comfort of inherited silence. Every annual report, every dedication plaque, every speech Ethan had delivered about Whitmore innovation had rested on that cowardice. At the lobby level, the doors opened to marble chilled by night air. Nia crossed to a brass waste bin beside the security desk, struck a match from the Galabar book still tucked inside her apron, and held the edge of Isaiah's letter above the flame. Ethan moved once, then stopped. "The contract," she said. "My father believed it would protect us. It protected the people who erased him." The flame warmed her fingertips before she pinched it out. A black crescent marked the page, but the letter remained intact. "I won't let his fear decide what happens next." She turned the hidden sheet over. Isaiah had written one final instruction there. Not a location, but a condition. The original agreement could be claimed only when a Carter heir appeared willingly beside a Whitmore heir and both renounced any private settlement. Nia placed the letter against Ethan's chest. Dawn was still hours away, yet the glass lobby had begun reflecting a pale line over Manhattan. "Your father stayed silent," she said. "Mine was forced into silence. At sunrise, we find out whether their children will speak together." Morning light struck the shareholder hall in hard white bands, flashing across polished walnut and 100 raised phones. The air conditioning blew cold enough to tighten skin, while the muted financial broadcast above the stage showed Whitmore shares trembling before the opening bell. Nia entered without a serving tray. Ethan walked beside her without his lapel pin. A corporate attorney moved to block them, but Nia placed Isaiah's final instruction on the registration desk. "Carter heir. Whitmore heir. No private settlement." The clerk examined their identification, then pressed a brass seal onto the document. A locked case beneath the desk released with a mechanical click. Inside lay the original ownership agreement, its paper yellowed, its wax seals unbroken. At 9:12 a.m., the chairman called the emergency meeting to order and demanded security remove them. No one moved. The chief of security stood near the rear doors, hands folded over his jacket. "Mr. Whitmore's preservation command remains valid," he said. "The footage cannot be erased without a judicial order." A murmur rolled through the hall like distant thunder. Nia took the center microphone. The metal felt cold beneath her fingers. "My father did not ask me to destroy this company," she said. "He asked me to stop allowing his silence to be sold as consent." She broke the seal herself. The agreement granted Isaiah Carter controlling ownership of Project Aurora's core patents if Whitmore Holdings ever concealed his authorship or pressured his family into a private settlement. Nia submitted the contract to the independent election inspector, then instructed counsel to structure restitution without freezing the pension-backed patents. Her choice cut off the chairman's last defense. He could no longer claim revenge threatened thousands of workers. Screens around the hall filled with Isaiah's engineering credits, the confidentiality clause, and the ownership trigger Whitmore Records had buried for years. The chairman rose so sharply that his leather chair struck the floor. "This document will collapse under litigation. Then it won't stand alone," Ethan said. Until that moment, he had remained one step behind Nia. Now he crossed the stage and placed an encrypted drive beside the contract. It contained board minutes, altered patent filings, internal payment records, and the preserved gala footage. He entered his personal shareholder authorization code, transferring every voting share still held in his name into an independent restitution trust. The monitor requested final confirmation. Ethan looked once at the silver Whitmore crest above the stage. Then he pressed confirm. His family inheritance vanished from the voting column. So did the chairman's majority. "You could have reclaimed the company," Nia said quietly. "Not by inheriting the lie," Ethan answered. The vote began. Green lights spread across the room, one row at a time, accompanied by the soft electronic chime of irrevocable ballots. The board was removed. The chairman's microphone went dead beneath his hand. At 9:28, the election inspector declared Project Aurora's intellectual property restored to the Carter family, with its operating licenses protected for employees and retirees. Applause did not come immediately. First came silence, the clean, stunned silence of a room watching power change owners. Then Nia signed the transfer register beneath her father's restored name. Ethan added his signature as witness, no title following it. Across Manhattan, the opening bell sounded from the broadcast speakers. Whitmore Holdings still existed, but for the first time, it no longer belonged to the version of history engraved across its walls. And as cameras turned toward Nia, one question remained sharper than the market's first numbers. What would she place where the Whitmore crest had stood? The bronze Whitmore crest descended on steel cables, its lower edge scraping the walnut wall with a sound like a blade dragged across stone. Camera shutters rattled. Hot studio lights baked the shareholder stage, mixing the scent of dust and polished wood with the cold air spilling from ceiling vents. Nia stood beneath the empty mounting brackets, no serving tray in her hands now, while Ethan waited beyond the glare among executives who no longer knew where to look. A facilities worker rolled forward the framed Project Aurora blueprint from the gala. Its glass had been cleaned. Its silver frame had not. The Whitmore plaque still occupied the center beneath the drawing, while Isaiah Carter's signature remained trapped in the lower corner, small enough to overlook, exactly as it had been for decades. Not there, Nia said. The worker stopped. Every lens followed her as she crossed the stage and released the frame's brass clasps herself. The paper whispered beneath her fingertips. Instead of raising Isaiah's signature into another symbol of corporate triumph, she removed the Whitmore plaque and carried it to the edge of the stage. Then she turned the blueprint over. My father's name spent long enough beneath somebody else's. Ethan stepped forward. He had no lapel pin, no security escort, no title glowing on the screen behind him. Only a black pen rested in his open palm. Nia did not take it. You witnessed the transfer, she said. This requires more. The room tightened around those words. Ethan looked toward the wall where generations of his family had presented ownership as inheritance. With both hands, he lifted the bronze crest from its cables and lowered it onto a padded cart. Metal met fabric with a dull, final thud. It was not another fortune he surrendered. It was the right to hide behind a name. Then let the record say who built it, he answered. Nia turned the blueprint face up and mounted it in the cleared space. Across its base, newly engraved letters caught the white stage light. Project Aurora, designed and safeguarded by Isaiah Carter. Beside them appeared a smaller line. Restored by Nia Carter, with Ethan Whitmore as public witness. Nia placed the original transfer register in a recessed case below the frame. Her father's restored signature stood first. Hers followed as owner. Ethan's remained beneath them without rank or inheritance attached. For the first time, the three signatures told the truth in the order history had denied them. The protected operating licenses stayed in force. Employees kept their jobs. Retirees kept their pensions. The Carter family held the intellectual property, and every future Aurora license would fund an engineering fellowship bearing Isaiah's name. No private settlement. No purchase silence. No erased hands. Ethan moved beside Nia, but he did not touch the frame. I can't return the years, he said quietly. No, Nia replied, securing the final clasp. But you can stop asking the future to repeat them. The hall rose. Not for a CEO, not for a dynasty, but for a man who had once corrected a fatal flaw and been punished for saving lives. Applause rolled against the walnut walls as Nia stepped back. Ethan remained beside her, emptied of inherited power, yet finally standing under an honest name. Isaiah Carter's signature had begun as the mark that shattered a glass. Now, placed where the Whitmore crest had ruled, it became the truth strong enough to hold the whole room.